I used to love that little path behind the soccer fields. 3 narrow turns through skinny pines, a creek that talked to itself, and the kind of quiet that feels like a blanket. It shaved 10 minutes off the walk home if I cut from the main road, and most evenings in late September, the light was gold enough to make everything look like a memory I wanted to keep. I'd pop my earbuds in, pretend the wind knew my name, and tell myself that small towns are the safest places on earth. I didn't plan to be brave that night. I planned to be fast. My manager kept me late, and the sky was already sliding towards slate when I reached the trailhead. One of the field lights buzzed like a bug, the size of a fist. Somewhere, a whistle blew 2 short notes, practice ending, bikes clattering, a chorus of "see you tomorrows." I texted my roommate a leaf emoji, the shorthand we use for cutting through, then tucked my phone into the inside pocket of my jacket where it wouldn't bounce. The first turn always smells like cold dirt. The second turn hides the creek until it's suddenly there. Wet breath, a glint through reeds. By the third, the trees lean just close enough to hush you. I pulled one earbud out because the hush felt thicker than usual. My mother's voice, the one tucked behind every bad idea I've ever had, cleared its throat in my head. Listen to yourself listening. It's a habit she taught me when I was little and afraid of the dark. Count the ordinary sounds and see if anything extra sneaks in. Crickets, water, my shoes, something else. Not loud. Not close, but not me. I swallowed and told myself that fall makes everything louder. Leaves move like gossip. Twigs audition for thunder. I walked, keys between my fingers, the way every woman I know has learned to walk since she was 12. I passed the old trail map with the sun-bleached arrows and noticed a fresh square stapled to the cork. Search volunteers needed, missing hiker, female, 24. Someone had stuck a yellow ribbon through the corner, and the ink had bled from dew. I told myself that was from last week, from the big story on the local news. I told myself somebody had already found her. I told myself a lot of things because telling is easier than turning back. 2 more steps. 3. The something behind me became a footfall, then a pause. Then another footfall, trying to be shy. I slid one earbud out completely and let the night move in. My chest do that small bird thing, wings against rib, the softer panic that precedes the scream. I didn't run. Running makes the rules change. I angled left toward where the trail opens into a shallow ditch, and the road lights throw a spill of safety. That's when the creek made a different noise, a splash like a shoe. I spun and saw nothing but a darker dark between 2 trees. "Hey," a man's voice called, gently, like asking a dog if it wants a treat. "You dropped something." I didn't drop anything. The voice was closer than it should have been and nicer than it needed to be. My mother's other rule, don't be rude to survive, tapped me on the shoulder. I took 1 step backward toward the shallow ditch and kept my eyes on the space between the trees. "I'm good, thanks." Leaves sighed, the shape detached from the dark. A tall man in a cap, hands visible, palms up. Every safety blog I've ever hate-read flickered in my head. "Show your hands, tuck soft, we're neutral." He smiled like he'd practiced in a mirror. "Didn't mean to spook you. I'm with the volunteer search group." He nodded toward the trail map. "We're still canvassing evenings." "Appreciate what you're doing," I said, matching his tone. My mother's rules stacked like plates in my throat. "My roommate's waiting. I'm late." "I can walk you out," he offered. The words landed in the space between us like a coin. I let them sit there and didn't pick them up. "Thanks," I said, stepping toward the glimmer of the road through the trees. "I know the way." Maybe it would have been nothing if a branch hadn't snapped back then, as if someone else had just put their weight on it. Maybe it would have been nothing if his smile had reached his eyes. Maybe I would tell you a different story. But the branch spoke and the smile didn't, and I understood something I didn't want to understand. I walked faster. He matched my speed without moving his feet, just the tilt of his shoulders, the suggestion that he could be close if he wanted to. My shoe found the shallow ditch and slipped. In the tiny moment where I windmilled and corrected, he closed the distance like a curtain. A chemically sweet smell rushed my nose as a cloth pressed across my mouth and the sky fell inward, the color draining like someone had pulled the plug. The last thing I remember before the dark did what dark does is the creek still talking to itself, unconcerned. Waking came slow and sideways. I learned the room before I learned my body. Low ceiling, a hum like an old refrigerator. Light from one bulb a shade too yellow. The smell of damp wood that hadn't seen daylight in a while. Then the rest of me checked in. Wrists sore, not bound, just rub-marked. A weight at my ankle. A band, plastic. A taste like pennies and something floral on the back of my tongue. The floor was painted concrete. A rug tried to pretend it wasn't. "Good," the man's voice said, as if I'd done him a favor by breathing. He wasn't near. He was behind the bulb, behind the hum. A camera blinked red in the corner, the cheap kind you can buy in a pack of 4. A shelf against the wall held 4 water bottles, a lunchbox, a stack of folded t-shirts that weren't mine. A small metal door set at me height on the far wall, like a pet entrance to hell. "I'm Gabe," he added, friendly as a bored cashier. "You hit your head falling. The ankle band is just so I know if you try to go exploring. You're safe if you listen." 100 answers crowded my mouth. I picked none of them. "Where am I?" I asked, because questions are currency, and I needed change. "Someplace quiet," he said. "Noise makes things messy." The metal door opened and a tray slid in. Water, crackers, applesauce, a plastic spoon. The kind of food you give to toddlers and people you don't trust. My hands shook so hard I laughed, a small, faint sound that felt like it belonged to somebody else. I didn't touch the tray. "I don't like wasting food," he said, mildly, like a rule posted in a teacher's classroom. "You should eat while you can." "I'm allergic to," I started, and stopped. "Don't give him pieces of you he hasn't earned," my roommate would say when I accidentally overshared on first dates. I drank the water and fought the urge to throw it up just to give myself something to do. "You were careful," he said conversationally. "Most women aren't. Most women think the world is for them. You stopped and listened. That's rare." "I need to go home," I said, every syllable wrapped tight so it wouldn't shake. "Someone will notice." He let silence do its mean trick before he answered. "Roommate, she'll think you stayed late. The boss, he'll think you quit. The cops, they'll search the trail and say thank you to guys like me." He smiled into the red blink of the camera, the way people smile when they imagine their good deed going viral. The words made me colder than the floor. "You're with the volunteers," I said. "You stapled the flyers." "I'm a helper," he said, almost proud. "I find people. I make stories end." My stomach flipped, not from fear this time, but from the way he said stories. I looked at the shelf again. Those folded t-shirts, the lunchbox with a sticker peeling off. A tiny dinosaur, one arm missing. On the news last week, the missing hiker's mother had mentioned a lucky sticker she'd kept on her daughter's water bottle since grade school. My breathing went sideways. I forced myself to study details like I was inventorying somebody else's life. Cinder blocks, paint chips, the corner where the rug curled, the hairline crack at the base of the wall like a road map no one had followed. "I write," I said suddenly, before I could tell myself it was a bad idea. The best thing I had was the truth, and the second best thing was the part of the truth that helps you live. I small columns. People read them sometimes. If I disappear, it won't be quiet. He tilted his head as if listening to a song I couldn't hear. Everyone disappears, some politely, some loud. He slid the tray farther in with his foot and closed the metal door. The hum changed. Generator? Fan? And somewhere above us, a pipe thumped like a heartbeat too slow. I drank again, just enough to make swallowing a thing I could still do, and touched the plastic band at my ankle.
It was the kind you get in a hospital, smooth on top, rough under the snap. I twisted it and felt the edge catch a hangnail. I needed something sharper than my own skin. The room didn't have corners you could hide in. It had corners you could think in. I crawled to the rug and flipped it. Dust, a paperclip flattened by a shoe, and a straight pin bent into a V. I palmed both and slipped him under the cuff of my sleeve where the seam had started to fray. If he walked the camera, he saw me move and didn't stop me. If he didn't, the red blink was theater. The next time the little door opened, I told him my name. Not all of it. The short version, the one my sister used to shout from the back porch when dinner was ready. He liked that. He liked that I learned. You'll feel better if you sleep. It's worse when you keep count. He said it like he cared, and I hated that it sounded a little bit true.
Sleep came in thin strips. Every time I drifted, something tugged me back, metal settling, my heart remembering it was a drum, a memory of the trail map bleeding onto the cork, and my phone buzzing inside my jacket where it couldn't find me. In the second strip of sleep, I saw my mother standing in the doorway to my old room, her hand on the light switch asking, "Do you want the hall light on?" I woke crying so quietly, it made my ribs hurt. He talked when he came, not often, not long, but enough to fill the room with him. He had a voice designed for church basements and PTA meetings. He told me he grew up near here, that the pines were smaller then, that the creek used to freeze so hard you could walk across that like a dare. He told me about his dog in third grade, and a teacher who didn't see him, and a woman who did and then didn't. He gave me a past in pieces, like bait. I let it sit. He watched to see if I would be the kind of person who organizes the pieces into a man. I kept them like loose screws instead. On the third tray, the camera went dark for 4 breaths. It came back blinking. An accident, I told myself. A test, the part of me that still had a job said back. I used the breaths anyway. The straight pin worked on the wristband if I twisted slow and counted up to 30 between each tiny push so the plastic wouldn't squeal. 30 is a good number. It fits inside a minute without making you panic. "What's your plan?" he asked later, voice amused, eyes on the band where the plastic had turned white where I'd stressed it. "You think the woods will give you a ride home?" "Sometimes the woods keep secrets," I said. "Sometimes they don't." He laughed softly. "If you make it to the road, you'll run toward the first porch light and knock until your hands bleed. You'll say please more in that 1 minute than you've said all year. But here is the math. By the time you get to the light, I'll be the one opening the door." My throat closed like a fist. Panic, like a dog I couldn't shake, circled tight. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he believed them. I pressed my palm to the wall and imagined someone on the other side. Another room, another girl, some future version of me who had already survived and was passing notes backward through time. "Mark something," my future self said. "Make crumbs only you would recognize." I pulled one thread from the cuff of my jacket and tied it in a tiny knot around a screw at ankle height, white on gray, a mark a person not looking for would never see. On the 4th morning, if it was morning, the bulb told lies about time. The hum changed to a cough and then a stutter. Silence fell like a heavy blanket for one perfect heartbeat. The generator, if that's what it was, had hiccuped. Above me, faint but real, a sound I couldn't mistake. Tires on gravel, doors, voices, the clipped, unhurried cadence of people who've been told not to run. Searchers. The ones with yellow vests and too kind eyes and clipboards to list the ways they failed the last time. I sat up so fast my head rattled. "Someone's here," I said, and didn't bother keeping the tremor out of my voice. "Hope is a tool, too, if you don't let it cut you." He didn't speak through the door. He didn't have to. The metal squealed, the tray slid back in with no food,
Just a folded navy cap with volunteer embroidered where a decent person might put a team name. A second later, I heard boots on stairs and the distant rhythm of a polite knock on a door I couldn't see. He's part of them, the smallest, cruelest truth, said, the one with the most reasonable face. He will chat on porches about keeping girls safe while you count the holes in the ceiling tile and try to keep your name from coming apart. He left the camera off for longer this time. I used the pen to worry the band. I counted 30, then 30 again, then 20 because the minutes started to stretch like rubber. The plastic let go with a sound felt too loud. I froze, mouth open to catch the noise and swallow it. Nothing moved. If the camera had come back on, the red blink would have been a confession. It stayed dark. I slid the band off and set it on the rug like a shed skin. The little metal door had a hinge on the outside and a latch on the inside shaped like a question mark. He'd made it to feed trapped things. It could also bleed them. I slid my fingers through the gap and felt cold air and rough wood. Not enough room for me. Enough for a rest. Enough, maybe, for the pin to find something less polite than plastic. I worked the pin into the latch while my breath did dumb tricks, and the footsteps above moved from polite to leaving. When it finally clicked, it wasn't open. It was only a question mark becoming an exclamation point in my head. I pushed. The hatch gave an inch, then stopped like a mouth that refuses to open for medicine. Something heavy on the other side, a cinder block, a stack of them. I stopped pushing and pulled instead. The hatch shivered and dust shook free like tiny snow. I couldn't move the block. I could move the idea that nothing moved. His boots on the stairs again. I slid the hatch shut and put the band back around my ankle the way you put a ring back on before you walk into church. When he opened the door, he carried a small battery lantern and the tired smile of a man who had been thanked in public. Good news, he said lightly. They searched the ravine by the quarry, not here. We get some quiet. I heard them, he said. They'll be back. They always come back, he agreed, almost tender. But not for you. Not yet. Why me? I asked. Because it sat in the room with us whether I picked it up or not. Why any of us? He considered me like a coach deciding if I earned the next drill. He said, you looked like someone who would be missed and someone who would think she deserved to be missed. Despair poured through me and then out of me, like my body realized it couldn't afford to keep it. Under the empty comes the useful. I need to use the bathroom, I said. He nodded toward a bucket behind a screen that hadn't been there yesterday. Shame took a small bite out of me. I let it. One more thing I could survive. When he left again, I rolled the rug and shoved it against the far wall. I slid my fingers under the baseboard where the crack had looked like a map and felt grit, then metal, thin like a taped spine. I pulled. A nail, long and rest-kissed, came free with the sty. The camera would have heard if it had been watching. I wrapped it in my sleeve and tucked it into my waistband. Every story I'd ever loved had at least one moment where the person you root for steals fire from a god. This nail wasn't fire, but it was heat.
You can live a long time on small plans. That was mine. A pin, a nail, a knot of thread around a screw no one else would see, and the knowledge that the footsteps above were real enough to keep stepping. The room didn't grow kinder. I got better at living in it. I ate enough crackers to think. I drank enough water to keep my blood from turning to chalk. I practiced sliding the hatch a breath at a time and placing the cinder block back where it belonged like a shy apology. I learned his schedule by the way his voice changed when he hadn't slept. More sugar in it, more Sunday school. I learned the exact length of the camera's lie. And at night, when sleep cut itself into strips again, I told the air stories I wasn't sure I believed yet. The one where my roommate ignores the leaf emoji and calls the police. The one where my mother, who always leaves the hall light on,
refuses to turn it off for days. The one where the creak tells the searchers to stand closer together because the thing they are looking for is too small to find alone. In my favorite version, the woods keep a secret just long enough to protect me, then give me back.
The nail lived against my skin like a secret I wasn't supposed to carry. Every time I bent or shifted, it whispered hello in a way that reminded me I hadn't lost everything. He didn't know I had it. Or if he did, he hadn't decided yet what that meant. I tested it on the plastic band once when the red light on the camera blinked slow and lazy. The edge cut the surface with less effort than the pin. Progress isn't always a shout. Sometimes it's just the sound of a scratch no one else hears. The voices above came less often now. The search was shrinking. I could feel it in the air that pressed heavier each day. Quiet can be a wall, and it was building. I thought about Lily, the girl on the missing flyer. I thought about her mother's hands on the microphone, about the way hope sounds when it's forced to share space with math. I wondered if Lily had a nail, or a thread, or if I was carrying hers for her.
The fifth tray had no applesauce, just water and crackers again. He watched me drink through the little door, eyes on the trimmer in my hand. "You're adjusting," he said, like he was a teacher, and I'd aced something. "I dream," I answered, because sometimes truth is camouflage. "What about?" "Doors that don't open, roads that turn back." He tilted his head. "Dreams tell the truth, if you're brave enough to listen." I nodded, but what I thought was, dreams also lie to keep you alive. That night, I pressed the nail against the baseboard again, widening the crack until dust filled the air. My chest hurt from holding my breath, but I didn't stop until the hole could hide the nail if I needed it to. I left it there, tip exposed, like a bookmark only I would notice. When he came in the next morning with a fresh bulb to replace the one that flickered, I thought about using it. I thought about lunging, driving it into whatever part of him was closest. But he had the lantern and the voice and the practiced patience of someone who expected to win. I let the thought sit. A thought can be a weapon too, if you keep it sharp.
On the 6th day, or 7th, time had lost its edges. The hums stopped again, this time longer, long enough that the silence became a scream. I crawled to the hatch and slid it. The center block had shifted, not much, but enough to show that things outside of me moved too. I pushed. It scraped, loud as thunder. I froze. Boots on stairs. Faster this time. He was coming. I shoved the hatch closed, heart in my throat, hand shaking so bad I nearly dropped the band as I slid it back over my ankle. The door opened before I could sit properly. He stood there, not smiling, not soft, just watching, like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. "What are you doing?" he asked, not angry, worse, curious. "Nothing," I whispered, voice breaking into 2 pieces. Just stretching." He stepped inside, eyes flicking to the rug I'd moved, the dust on my hands, the corner where the crack had grown. His jaw worked once, twice, like he was chewing a thought. Then he crouched and brushed his fingers along the dust. When he stood again, he carried the nail. My stomach dropped through the floor. "Please," I started, but the word tangled in panic. He turned the nail in his fingers, studying it like an artifact. He said, finally, "Resourceful. That's rare." I waited for the punishment. The chain, the slap, the taking away. Instead, he tucked the nail into his pocket and left without closing the door fully. The gap was small, but it was there, and the red blink of the camera was steady as a heartbeat. The panic didn't fade. It moved. Now it lived in my blood, buzzing, restless. I pressed my back to the wall and whispered my own name until it sounded like someone else's.
That night, the bulb stayed dark. The hum never came back. The room was only my breath and the faint scrape of mice in the walls. I thought he had abandoned me to silence. I thought maybe that was the punishment, that my own heartbeat would be the only sound until it drowned me. I counted minutes. I counted cracks. I counted ways silence can hurt. Then the hatch scraped open. Not the way it usually did. This time slow, uneven, like someone weaker than him was pushing. I crawled forward before I could think better. A hand slipped through. Small, dirt-streaked, trembling. A girl's voice whispered, "Don't talk. He's asleep." My breath shattered. Lily! She was alive! Or someone like her. I touched her fingers just enough to know they were real. She pressed something into my palm. Metal, flat, sharper than the nail. A piece of broken tin, maybe. Edges bent inward. "Next time," she mouthed, and pulled her hand back before the hatch slammed shut. I curled around the tin, tears burning my eyes. Adrenaline surged through me, hot and useless. I wanted to scream her name, to promise her I wouldn't waste this, but despair sat heavy on my tongue. He wasn't the only one here, and that meant survival wasn't just mine anymore.
I pressed the tin under my sleeve where the nail had once lived. My wrists still bore the rub marks. My ankles still ached from the band. My throat still hurt from all the words I hadn't said. But for the first time, the story wasn't only mine. She had given me proof that endings can still change. Proof that maybe, just maybe, the woods didn't keep all their secrets. And I swore, in a voice so quiet only the dark could hear it, that if I walked out of here, I wouldn't walk out alone. The tin cut into my arm every time I shifted, but I let it. Pain has a way of reminding you that you're still here, that the story hasn't ended. I thought about Lily's hand, thin, shaking, but strong enough to reach. I wondered how long she had been here, how many trays had slid her way, how many lies he had told her to keep her quiet. The thought made my stomach twist. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I pressed my ear against the wall where the hatch sat, hoping to hear her. Nothing but the low thrum of pipes. Still, I whispered, "I'm here," as softly as I could. Maybe she'd hear it the way you hear the ocean in a shell. He came back with the tray the next morning, or whatever morning meant here. His smile was back in place, practiced, even as his eyes flicked toward the hatch. "Sleep okay?" he asked, like a hotel clerk. "Fine," I said, voice steady even though my fingers itched toward the tin. He studied me for too long, then slid the tray in with an apple slice balanced on top of the crackers. "Little rewards," he said, "for honesty." I nodded and forced myself to take a bite, though it turned bitter the moment it hit my tongue. He wanted me calm, obedient. He wanted me to keep pretending. I would, but beneath the pretending, I was sharpening.
When he left, I crawled back to the hatch. This time, a whisper slipped through. "Tonight." My heart leapt so hard I nearly answered out loud. I pressed my palm to the wood, the closest thing to a promise I could give.
The hours stretched like rubber bands pulled too far. Every sound became a threat. The scrape of boots above, the sudden click of the bulb, even my own breathing. I couldn't stop picturing what would happen if he found her trying again, if he decided one of us was enough and she was extra. When the hum faltered again, I thought it was my chance. But instead of silence, the camera blinked bright and steady, and the hatch didn't move. Panic crawled under my skin. What if she had changed her mind? What if he had already... Footsteps. The door swung wide, flooding the room with light. He stepped in, carrying a coil of rope. My heart froze. "Insurance," he said simply, like he was explaining a price tag. He tied my wrists, not tight enough to cut circulation, but enough to steal choice. "You've been restless." "I'm not," I started, but he tugged the knot, and my words strangled. He left me like that, wrists bound, the tin still tucked under my sleeve. My chest rose too fast, panic climbing higher with each breath. Bound hands meant fewer options, but they didn't mean none.
I waited, counted to 60, counted again. The hatch whispered open in the dark. Her face appeared, pale and streaked with dirt, eyes too wide for someone so young. She saw the rope, and her mouth trembled, but she didn't back away. She slipped her hand through, holding something small, rusty wire. I angled my bound wrists toward her. Her fingers shook as she worked the wire against the knot. Every scrape of rope on rope sounded like thunder to me, but she didn't stop. Sweat rolled down my back. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure it would wake him. Finally, the rope loosened. I pulled my hands free, biting back a sob. I grabbed her fingers, squeezed once. "We wait," I whispered. She nodded, eyes shining, and closed the hatch. I pressed the tin to the rope, cutting through the remaining fibers until nothing held me. I coiled the rope neatly, set it near the rug the way he might expect. Every move had to be careful. Rage wanted me to run at the door with the tin and end it now. Despair told me he would always win. But survival told me patience is sharper than any blade. I lay back on the rug, hands free, the tin warm against my palm. The silence pressed heavy, but it carried hope now, too. Lily had risked herself for me. That meant she believed in escape. That meant escape existed. I stared at the ceiling until the cracks blurred. "Not alone," I whispered. My throat felt raw, my voice split, but the words steadied me. Tomorrow, or whatever counted as tomorrow, we would try.
Morning, if it was morning, brought the tray again. This time, no apple, no extras, just crackers and water. His face hovered longer at the door, searching me, weighing me. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Not too bold, not too weak. Just enough. "You're quiet," he said. "Trying to sleep more," I answered, tone steady. "Makes the time pass faster." He smiled faintly, like I'd learned a lesson. "Good girl." The words made my skin crawl, but I swallowed them like medicine. When the door shut, I waited for the click of his boots fading upstairs before crawling to the hatch. The whisper came quickly this time. "Tonight," Lily mouthed. Her eyes darted side to side, terrified but determined. She slid something through. A bent piece of metal, sharpened at the tip, stronger than the tin. "Where?" I mouthed back. She pointed up, then across. A gesture, but clear enough. Stairs, side exit. My heart raced. If she knew a way, it meant she'd been here longer. She'd mapped this place.
She wasn't just a ghost in the walls. She was the cartographer of our survival. I clenched the shard in my fist, hiding it under the ragged sleeve. "We'll wait until he sleeps," I whispered. She nodded and closed the hatch, leaving me alone with my thoughts that screamed louder than any footsteps.
That night stretched like wire, ready to snap. Every creak in the wood above jolted me. Every hum of the generator made me wonder if he was watching, waiting, testing. I couldn't stop picturing him finding the hatch open, Lily caught, punished. At one point, boots hit the stairs. The doors swung wide. I froze, shard hidden beneath me. He stepped inside, carrying a lantern. His eyes scanned the room, resting on the rug, the walls, the food tray I hadn't touched. "You're not eating," he said. "Not hungry," I whispered, throat dry. He studied me for a long moment, then set the lantern down and left without another word. My whole body shook after the latch clicked. Fear is heavier when it waits in silence. Hours later, the hatch opened again. Lily's eyes shone in the faint spill of lantern light from the hallway. "Now," she mouthed. I slid forward, pulse hammering. Together, we pushed the hatch. This time, the cinder block moved easier. She must have worked on it from her side for days. Dust filled the air as we shoved. When the gap was wide enough, I wriggled through, elbows scraping, knees bruising. Lily pulled from the other side until I tumbled into a narrow crawl space. It smelled of mold and old wood. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might shake the beams above us. Lily was smaller, quicker. She slid through and grabbed my hand, tugging me forward. We crawled, wood groaning, dust choking. Behind us, the hatch gaped like a wound. Ahead, faint air, cooler, fresher. Hope. But then a sound. Heavy, measured. Boots on the stairs again. We froze. Lily squeezed my hand so tight it hurt. The lantern light spilled faintly through cracks in the boards above us. His voice floated down, calm, steady, terrible. "Where do you think you're going?" My stomach dropped. Despair crushed my chest. He knew. He always knew. I wanted to scream, to claw my way forward, but Lily's hand held me still. Her eyes pleaded, "Wait." The boots stopped above us, then moved away, slower, deliberate, like he was daring us to keep going. My breath shook, but I nodded to her. Forward. Always forward. Even if he knew. Even if despair clung like a second skin. Because staying meant ending. Moving meant maybe. We crawled deeper into the dark. The crawl space stretched longer than I imagined, a coffin-shaped tunnel lined with dust and spider webs. My elbows scraped raw, but I forced myself not to stop. Lily moved ahead of me, small enough to slip faster, and her hand tugged me forward when I slowed. The air grew cooler, fresher, a promise of outside. Each breath carried a whisper of pine and damp leaves. I could almost picture the trail, the creek, the life I had lost track of. But behind us, the silence wasn't empty. It had weight, like he was letting us move, letting us hope, just so he could crush it later. The tunnel widened slightly, enough for us to crouch. Ahead, wooden boards glowed faintly, daylight leaking through thin cracks. My chest swelled. An exit! Lily pressed a finger to her lips and crawled to the boards. She tapped one softly, loose. Together we pushed. It shifted, groaning like an old tree, but not enough. We tried again. The gap opened and cold air kissed my skin. But before joy could bloom, a voice drifted through the crawl space.
calm, patient, amused. Go on, push harder, see what waits for you. My blood iced. The voice came not from behind, but ahead, outside. Lily gasped and nearly scrambled backward, but I grabbed her arm. My own heart thundered so violently it felt like it might tear free. He was there, waiting. The boards creaked again, this time from his side. Lantern light flared, seeping through the cracks. His silhouette loomed larger than life. "You think the woods will save you?" he asked softly. The woods belonged to me. Panic clawed my throat. If we went forward, we met him. If we went back, we returned to his cage. The tunnel shrank around me, stealing my breath. "We're trapped," Lily whispered, eyes wide with terror. "No," I hissed, even though despair burned. "Not yet."
I yanked the shard from my sleeve, the piece of metal Lily had given me. It gleamed in the lantern light, small but sharp, my only weapon. He chuckled, low and easy. "You'll cut me? That's cute. Try." He slammed the board shut, darkness swallowing us. The echo rattled down the crossbase. Lily sobbed silently, her body shaking against mine. Despair pressed heavy, but adrenaline shoved back. I crawled the other direction, dragging Lily. "Back! There's another way. There has to be." We scrambled, hands and knees raw, lungs burning. Behind us, his boots followed, not rushed, not frantic, slow, taunting, like a cat giving its prey a head start. "Run, little mice! I'll catch you anyway." Lily whimpered. My chest ached with rage and terror. We kept moving. The tunnel forked, left into deeper dark, right toward faint humming. I chose right. Anything but silence. We crawled into a cramped room, cluttered with tools, paint cans, broken chairs. An old basement. One narrow window sat high on the wall, barred but cracked. Air seeped through, cool and damp. "We can break it," I whispered, raising the shard. My arms trembled, but I slammed it against the glass. It cracked, lines spidering out. Again, again. Boots echoed closer. His whistle floated through the crawlspace, a cheerful tune, obscene in the dark. The glass finally shattered. Cold night air poured in. Lily scrambled onto a chair, reaching. I boosted her up, heart hammering. She squeezed through, cut streaking her arms, but she was outside, free. I clambered after her, shoving my shoulders through the gap. The bars scraped my ribs. My hips caught. I pushed harder, desperation burning every nerve. Then his hand clamped around my ankle.
I screamed, but it tore more like a sob. Lily grabbed my hands from outside, pulling, her small body straining against mine. His grip tightened, nails biting. For a moment, I was torn between worlds, freedom ahead, captivity behind. My chest broke with the weight of it. But Lily didn't let go, and neither did I. The story wasn't ending here. Not like this.
His fingers dug into my ankle like iron claws, and the cold from the outside world battled with the heat of his grip. Lily's nails bit into my wrists as she pulled, her eyes wide with terror but blazing with determination. For a second, the world was nothing but hands, hers pulling forward, his dragging me back. I whispered to myself, "Not here, not again, not the end." The word steadied me even as fear gnawed at my ribs. His voice slithered through the gap. "You belong here. Don't make me hurt you." The calmness in his tone was worse than rage. It told me he believed he had already won. I twisted, clawing at the window frame, forcing my hips forward an inch, then another. The bars sliced my skin, but the pain pushed me harder. "Pull!" I gasped. Lily sobbed but obeyed, bracing her feet against the ground and heaving with all her strength. I kicked with my free leg, heel connecting with his wrist. He grunted but didn't let go. The shard of metal still lay tucked in my sleeve. With shaking fingers, I grabbed it and slashed downward. His scream tore the air, raw, furious. His grip loosened just enough. I lurched forward, half my body now outside. Night air surged over me, sharp and cold, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. But then his other hand shot through, clawing at my leg, dragging me back. The bars pressed into my ribs, cutting off my breath. Panic roared in my ears. Lily cried out, "Don't let go!" Her voice cracked, a child's plea wrapped in steel. I dug my nails into the dirt outside, refusing to release it. My chest burned, my head spun, but I clung to the ground like it was the only truth left in the world.
I remembered my mother's voice. Listen to yourself. Listening. All I could hear was my own ragged breath, Lily's sobs, and his guttural growl as he tried to reel me back in. With a surge of adrenaline that felt like fire in my veins, I twisted hard, ramming my elbow against the edge of the window frame. The shard in my hand found flesh again. His scream this time was louder, angrier, animal. His grip faltered. Lily yanked with every ounce of strength she had. My body tore free from the bars, leaving strips of skin and fabric behind. I collapsed onto the wet grass, gasping, sobbing, broken, but outside. The night sky loomed above, stars blurred by tears. For a moment, despair whispered, "It's not over. He'll come. He'll never stop." But adrenaline drowned it out. I staggered up, pulling Lily with me. "Run!" I rasped, and we did.
Branches whipped my face. Mud clung to my shoes. Every breath felt like a knife. But each step carried us further from the trap, further from his hands. Behind us, the basement howled with his rage. His voice chased us through the trees. "I'll find you! You can't hide from me!" But the woods, once heavy with dread, felt different now. The creek sang louder. The leaves whispered faster. It was as if the forest itself wanted us gone, wanted us safe. We stumbled onto a gravel road, headlights flaring in the distance. A car slowed, brakes squealing, a woman's voice shouting, "Oh my God!" Strong hands, not his, real hands, pulled us into safety. Phones lit up. Sirens echoed. The night finally cracked open into something new. I collapsed, clutching Lily's hand like it was the only anchor left. My voice was broken, raw, but steady enough to whisper one truth. We survived.
Blue and red lights painted the trees like a nightmare carnival. The sirens were distant at first, then close enough to rattle in my chest. My breath still came in broken sobs, my skin torn and burning. But those colors meant something I hadn't allowed myself to believe in. Help. The woman who'd pulled us from the road wrapped a blanket around Lily and pressed another into my shaking hands. "You're safe now," she said, but my heart didn't trust the words yet. Deputies swarmed the property, flashlights slicing through the trees. Dogs barked, voices shouted commands. I clung to Lily's hand as though letting go would return us to the crawl space. Then, from the tree line, he emerged, lantern gone, face twisted in fury,
shirt dark with his own blood where I'd cut him. He didn't run, he walked, calm, confident, like the woods still belonged to him. "There," someone shouted. Guns were raised, but his eyes found mine across the chaos, and he smiled. That same practiced, empty smile. He didn't stop walking, didn't raise his hands. He moved closer, ignoring the commands, ignoring the weapons. "She's mine," he said, voice carrying like a hymn. "You don't understand. They're all mine." My throat closed, my knees buckled. For one frozen second, I was back in the basement, cloth over my mouth, his hands dragging me into the dark. Panic hollowed me out. Lily cried out and pressed against me. "Don't let him take us back." The deputies shouted louder. "Down, get on the ground." He didn't. The shot cracked like thunder. He stumbled, but even then he reached a hand toward me, not begging, claiming. His body hit the dirt, but his smile lingered, carved into my memory. I shook so hard I thought my bones might splinter. Sirens swallowed his voice. Officers swarmed, restraining what was left of him, calling for medics. Someone asked my name. Someone else checked my wrists. A paramedic shone a light into my eyes and told me to breathe. But all I could hear was his voice echoing in my skull. "You belong here." Despair whispered that maybe I'd never escape him, even if he never stood again. Hours later, in the sterile light of a hospital, I sat wrapped in a blanket that smelled of soap, not damp. Lily slept beside me, her hand still in mine. Reporters shouted outside. Police spoke in low tones about charges, about survivors, about evidence they'd found in the basement. But none of it mattered more than the rise and fall of Lily's chest. She was real. We were alive. When my mother arrived, her face crumpled as she pulled me into her arms. For the first time in days, I let myself cry, not from fear, not from panic, but from the broken relief of still being here. I whispered into her shoulder, voice cracked and uneven. I made it home. And though I knew the nightmares would follow me, though his smile would stalk my sleep, the truth sat steady in my chest. The woods gave me back